so much, Jeff. It's 7:34, a saying we've all heard, life is very precious. And the recent celebrity deaths show us it can be cut short at any time. Now, in case of an unplanned passing, what should you do to protect your family's finances?
Well, financial guru Howard Dvorkin is here to talk about the importance of wills in a segment sponsored by Consolidated Credit Counseling Services. So let's bring him in right now. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
We're doing well. Well, we mentioned earlier this morning that Michael Jackson may or may not have had a will, and we also gave a statistic that as many as 70% of Americans do not have a last will and testament. So first question right at you, why should people have a will?
I mean, people need a will because they don't want the courts deciding what they're doing with their assets, and more importantly, their most important asset, which is their children. Right now, a judge in California is trying to figure out what to do with Michael Jackson's child or children, and that's a terrible thing. People need to take the time to it doesn't matter how young you are or in what type of health, you need to take the preparation now to make sure that all is in order in case you pass.
Howard, you mentioned it doesn't matter how old you are, and for our viewers this morning, I mean, are you talking 15 years old, 20, 30? Seriously, and what is the process like? What is the first thing you should do to make a will?
I mean, figure out what you want to go to whom. And don't rely on verbal telling people verbally. You need to put it on paper, and it's a process. You can't just walk into a lawyer's office and decide and walk out thinking that everything's done after a half-hour meeting. You have to decide what goes where, and especially when you're talking kids, and it gets very complicated when you have kids from another marriage or a mixed marriage, and also if your spouse and you pass away at the same time, who gets the child then?
One of the reasons I think so many Americans may not have a will is because so many of them don't really have much money, and some are even in debt. So if you pass away, what happens with your debt?
Well, let's face it, a lot of people are in debt right now. But even if you die with debt, the estate is still responsible for paying those bills up to the amount of the debt that's still there. So even if you're Michael Jackson, they say he died with $400 million worth of debt, the estate is still responsible for paying that debt. Your debts don't necessarily die with you.
But you say your estate is responsible. So let's say you have one child, okay? And now, but your home, the child doesn't have a home, the home isn't worth anything. Does that mean that the child would then be responsible for ultimately paying that debt? Is that how that works?
No, the estate, and basically the estate has certain assets when you die, whether it's life insurance or whatever, and it turns around and pays off the debts as much as it can, and then the remainder passes to your child.
Okay.
So there's a lot, it's very complicated. Also, I want to mention that if you take a life insurance, a lot of people just take a policy and say, leave it to my kids. Do you really want that 18-year-old child having $100,000, $200,000 at 18? I know at 18, I was not capable of handling that money. I probably wasn't capable of handling $5 at that time, but now I am. So you need to make sure that you deal with a professional estate planner that can guide you and give you tips and techniques in order to properly allocate your assets.
Okay, Howard, staying on the children, beyond the financial aspect, you know, so someone dies and they have children. What happens, and can it get really messy? Because do you split the kids up, or how do you deal with that?
It depends. If there's no will,
there's no will.
If there's no will, the court has to decide. And other than leaving you, all of us, assets of Michael Jackson, what's going to happen to the children? He has 3 children, and I believe from different mothers.
2. Right, 2 are from the same mother, and the third is from a surrogate.
And that's a major problem, because what does happen to the kids? And I know this from a personal standpoint. You know, the kids split up because it's a burden taking on more children. No matter what's in your heart, it's a very difficult thing to happen. And you need to make sure that you plan ahead. Preparation is key. So go out, start thinking about it, go to a state attorney, and do it now.
Howard Dvorkin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
It's always good to have you here. And remember, to read more about what you can do to protect your family's finances, or to learn more about Howard or Consolidated Credit Counseling Services, all you have to do is go to southflorida.com/money. And also on Howard's page, you can find information on the financial steps you should take after the death of your spouse. There you can also find our money tip of the week.